What is up, guys? Rickackis here, and today we're comparing Destiny and The Division. Now, the reason we're doing this is firstly so that people can have a better understanding of how The Division works when we compare it to a very well-known game like Destiny, and secondly, I just want to talk about this stuff with you guys because I am a huge fan of loot-based shooters. Many of you know that, back in the day, I used to be a dedicated Borderlands channel. I would post nothing but really Borderlands videos, and I made a lot of big Borderlands videos back in the day. And Destiny was kind of supposed to be the next great step forward for that genre of loot-based shooters. In some aspects, it did succeed. In others, it failed. Definitely failed. But, now The Division is coming out, and The Division is again supposed to be the next great step forward for that genre. So we're going to compare the two games and see where it's definitely succeeding, or at least it looks like it's succeeding, and where it might have some trouble. Now, before I begin, I definitely want to say that I've made a Division video that is basically just one big information dump. It's going to go over a lot of just raw information about The Division, so if you're interested in that, I would definitely recommend watching it and just kind of getting up to date with how The Division really works. So it'll be linked in the description, and there's going to be an annotation that you can click on screen right now. But with that out of the way, let's get started with the comparison, and most of this video is going to be comparing the loot systems, because these games, kind of their main feature is the loot system. It's going to be why people play, and if it's done well, why people keep playing. So let's get started with the basics. So when we have The Division, it is the color-coded rarity scale for weapons and armor, just like we're used to in Destiny. So you have green weapons are the worst in The Division, then there's blue, then purple, and gold or orange is the best. Now, for weapons, how the rarities are determined is that the more rare an object is, the more talents or essentially perks it has, again, just like Destiny. So if you have a green SMG, it might not have any talents, any perks, but a blue one will have a talent. A purple one may have 2 talents, and a gold one will have 3 talents. So you're obviously looking for those better rarity of guns because you want more talents, because talents are going to provide useful benefits. An example of a specific talent that was in the Division Alpha was a submachine gun that did 5% extra damage against elite and named enemies. So basically it's doing 5% more damage against bosses, which is a very interesting perk. Now, additionally, you actually have attachments in The Division that are droppable, lootable items. So you can have optics, extended magazines, you can have stocks, you can have barrels, all of that stuff is actually like lootable items within the game. So you can loot, let's say, a purple MP7, and then you can also loot a purple foregrip, and that foregrip is going to provide, 10% extra accuracy when equipped to a weapon. And a gold foregrip, for example, will provide 15% extra accuracy. And you can actually put this purple foregrip on your MP7, for example, to increase the accuracy of your MP7. And then let's say you get a better MP7. Let's say you get a gold MP7. Well, you can take off your foregrip from your purple MP7 or your worse MP7 and put it onto your better one. You can actually mix and match and move around your attachments. So the attachments are actually added into The Division as an extra layer of loot and of diversity, which I think is so awesome. Now, for armor, they're also going to have more attribute increases. So in The Division, there's 3 main attributes, just like how there's 3 different attributes in Destiny with toughness, agility, and recovery, and you can kind of spec your character to have more of one or more of another. Now, in The Division, the 3 attributes that can be increased with armor is 1, an increase to weapon damage, 2, an increase to health, and 3, an increase to your ability, recharge rate and damage. And you can kind of change these around. There isn't just kind of one answer to the armor. So you might have a bunch of armor that is totally spec'd out for weapon damage, so you can just be dealing the most weapon damage. Or you can have armor that's spec'd out for the ability recharge rate and damage, so you can be really, really good with your abilities. And it kind of works the same in Destiny as well. You can go for an agility build, you can go for a toughness build, etc. Now already we've got a very interesting difference between The Division and Destiny. In Destiny, when you have the gold weapons and armor, they are unique. Like the Red Death there's only one Red Death, it doesn't come with different variants, it's very noticeable where you can see people with the Red Death, you know what weapon that is. But in the Division, it's different. In the Division, the gold best weapons and armor are actually still randomized. So you can get a gold MP5 in the Division with a certain 3 talents, and then you can get another one with 3 completely different talents. This is actually a pretty interesting difference. On the one hand, Destiny's exotic weapons and armor are pretty awesome. Like, having these really cool, recognizable exotics, they really do feel special. It's awesome that you can even hear people, like they sound different. When they shoot, you can hear people and know when they're shooting, hereafter, for example. But on the other hand, in the Division, keeping a certain level of randomization is going to increase diversity. In addition, you're also going to be able to wear as much gold weapons and armor as you want in the Divisions. You can have all your weapons gold and all your armor gold, whereas in Destiny, you can only have one exotic weapon and one exotic armor piece. Now, right now, I can't definitively say which system is better, the uniqueness of Destiny or the diversification of the Division. We're gonna have to see when these games come out which actually plays out, but I'm kind of more minded to side with the Division. I'm always in favor of diversity, and even though you can't get those super cool, unique, one-of-a-kind items like you can in Destiny, I mean, Destiny has the problem of so many of its exotics are completely useless. We all know this. We've all known this for a long time, that there's only really a few exotic armor and weapons that is actually usable, especially when we're talking about the higher echelon of PvP and PvE, and a lot just kind of are marginalized because they aren't that useful. In the Division, this really won't happen because everything is randomized. You're constantly hunting for those new weapons. Like, even if a certain weapon, let's say the Scar H, isn't that amazing, you're still going to be hunting for that special build, the special Scar H that spawns with the right talents to actually make it good. Now, moving on from rarity, there's also a lot of interesting differences in just how the loot system functions in general when we're talking about how the weapons themselves are differentiated. Now, in Destiny, one of its greatest failings, and I've actually made a video about how big of a problem this is that it really limits its own diversity by creating these weapon archetypes. Like, for example, auto rifles. There's been a bazillion different auto rifles in Destiny, like since it first came out to now. However, every single one of these auto rifles, when talking about non-exotic auto rifles, fall into only 3 damage archetypes. There's the highest damaging ones, there's the middle of the road ones, and then there is the lowest damaging, fastest firing ones. So you have all these auto rifles falling into only 3 categories that have the exact same rate of fire and damage, and the only things that can change are, stability, range, and reload and magazine size. It really doesn't make for a great amount of diversity, especially because you're always ending up looking for, certain points. Like for the fast firing auto rifles, you're always just looking for stability every time, and what happens is it makes the weapons feel very similar. Like a new DLC comes out, we're all excited, and it just doesn't feel that new, and that's because you're using weapons that are doing the exact same damage as you were using before the DLC. So again, this just doesn't feel very special. Now, in the Division, things seem to be different. How the weapons are different in the Division is that you'll have different actual real-life weapons. The Division is kind of grounded in reality, so you're going to have an MP5 in the Division. You're going to have a Scar H. You're going to have an MP7. You're going to have like an M1A1 carbine or whatever it is, all of these real life weapons, and these weapons each have their own different rarity scale. So you can get every single one of these weapons in the different rarities. So you can get an MP5 in green, you can get it gold, you can get it, blue, whatever, and it works the same again for all of the different weapons. And it seems that all of these weapons have kind of unique damage profiles. The MP5 has a different fire rate than the MP7, which does different damage than the Scar H. All of these weapons act very differently. Now, as long as the Division keeps this model for when it actually launches, that each weapon has a different damage profile and feels different, a scar rate should feel different from the ACR, from the M4, etc., then it'll have a massive advantage in diversity over Destiny. Again, that Destiny loot system is absolutely handicapped by the fact that everything needs to fall into these damage archetypes, whereas the Division can be a lot more creative. Now, another huge difference between these games, and actually it's very related into what I was just talking about weapon diversity, is PvP. The PvP within these two games is totally different, and I think the Division does it so much better. Now, how PvP works in the Division is that you have these dark zones. These are areas of the map that you can enter in either just by yourself or with your squad that you were using to play with in the PvE section of the game. And you enter into these zones, and in these zones you can actually kill other players. Now, interestingly enough, it actually punishes you for killing these other players. It takes away your experience and actually your money when you kill another player. So you may be thinking, well, then why would I kill another player? Well, the reason you would is because you go into these dark zones, and in these dark zones you can actually loot. There's certain lootable places, there's a chest guarded by a bunch of AI enemies, so you go in, take down the boss or whatever, loot this chest, and get a really sweet gold, machine gun. And then what? Because this gold machine gun is actually going to be infected, and the only way to actually keep this gold machine gun is that you have to extract. So you have to set up in a place, call for an extraction, and hold out for a minute or so, however long the timer is, and wait until a helicopter comes and picks you up, and then when it takes you out of the dark zone, then you have that weapon forever. However, if a player kills you with that weapon before you leave the dark zone, he then gets that weapon and has to extract as well. So that's a really interesting dynamic. It really kind of makes you think, do I want to kill this player? Heck, you could actually meet players, not kill them, and team up and form a mega squad within the dark zone. Just everyone goes and gets their own loot, and then everyone extracts, and it's all great. Or are you gonna turn on your teammates, kill them, take their loot, and get it for yourself? It's a really interesting dynamic, and I think it works a lot better when we're talking about a loot-based game. As you could tell from my explanation, PvP in the Division is built around the idea of loot. You're going into these dark zones trying to get loot, and then just trying to get this loot out, and stopping you may be other players. Destiny's PvP feels, quite honestly, just tacked on. And I don't want to be rude to people who do enjoy PvP, because there is a lot of fun moments in Destiny's PvP, especially when it's the special events like Trials of Osiris, but it has created so much problems for Destiny, and especially for PvE. I just talked about how Destiny's loot system, fitting everything into these narrow archetypes is really hurting diversity, but why do you think they do it? They do it because they're so afraid of anything becoming overpowered in PvP. And in addition, they're constantly making buffs and nerfs to the game for PvP, which there's nothing wrong with that, don't get me wrong. But the problem is that they're not offsetting these changes in PvE as well. And I think everyone can agree, even if you're the biggest PvP fan in Destiny, I think you can even agree that changes made for PvP reasons in Destiny should be offset in PvE. So if shotguns, they just were, a patch just came out and shotguns were nerfed for PvP reasons, and that nerf carried over into PvE, and right now almost no one is using shotguns in PvE, and again they were nerfed again, so that's just completely pointless. These changes need to be offset. A nerf made for PvP reasons obviously should be offset in PvE. It's very different between PvP and PvE. The irony is that I actually made a video 6 months before the alpha ever came out for Destiny, just talking about how one of the biggest problems potentially for Destiny is that if they, make buffs and nerfs for PvP reasons and don't offset it in PvE, because that's actually what ruined this little game called Defiance. There was a loot-based game called Defiance, and I used to play a little bit of it, and what ruined it for me is that literally I logged on one day and all of my gold weapons were shit, because people were just using them non-stop in PvP, and I didn't play PvP. So it was just pointless to go forth and keep getting these weapons in the game because they were constantly, any good weapon was being made bland because of PvP. Sound familiar? I think a lot of Destiny PvE players listening to this video just got chills because that's exactly what they've been experiencing. And all of that stuff that I was just talking about, that is a hot topic of debate within the Destiny community, is basically avoided almost entirely with the Division. Because the Division's PvP breaks down to small skirmishes, and again, it actually discourages you from killing other players, you really don't have the opportunity for one gun to become incredibly overpowered. And if you have, let's say for argument's sake, that the MP7, a gold MP7, is a little bit overpowered, then so what? You don't have these extremely competitive tournaments like you do with Iron Banner, for example, where everyone's going to be using that one same gun and it's going to become extremely frustrating to play against. You have these dark zones, and if a player has that MP7, there's a really good chance that they won't engage you whatsoever. And although I'm sure that there will be some nerfs if something is incredibly overpowered in the Division, it won't be as dramatic as it is in Destiny. And again, because the Division isn't super concerned with having this incredibly balanced and competitive PvP, it's more of a just fun way to get new loot, they can be a lot more creative with the weapons in the game. They can make weapons a little bit overpowered, for example, and no one's going to flip their lid. And that's also going to go into what I was saying is going to make weapons more diverse and less bland feeling, because a balanced game is a game where a lot of the weapons feel pretty similar. So guys, I am definitely looking forward to the Division. It seems like it emphasizes diversity, which is such an important factor within a loot-based game, so much more than Destiny did. Now, one of the reasons is because, it has an extra layer of diversity with the whole attachment system, in addition to having really diverse weapons that aren't confined to certain weapon archetypes, because it's not handcuffed by its own PvP. Now, things definitely may change. I'll try to keep you guys as updated as possible when it comes to the Division, but I'm super excited for the upcoming beta and then finally the full launch. Now that's it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, please remember to rate and share this video. It really helps me out, and if you want to see more Division content, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. Now, if you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter. That's linked in the description of this video down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can follow as well. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.